In my views, biological medicine is kind of a merger of different systems of medicine. And when I say systems of medicine, everybody is familiar with certain aspects of medicine, whether that's conventional medicine or alternative medicine or Chinese medicine, and it breaks down into modalities such as prescriptive drugs, vitamins, herbs, acupuncture. And biological medicine is a merger, or I'd say a marriage of all of these, and it's based on what human physiology is capable of doing, which everybody, when we went to medical school, said, this is an amazing organism, this is its potential. Sometimes it gets sidetracked into doing things that it shouldn't do. We know based on acute problems, those can be corrected, but there's this whole new system of, we'll say, disease called chronic disease. And I think that's where biological medicine kind of got its shine from, was that it was able to take a lot of the diagnostics and combine it with a lot of the therapies. Everybody has the capability to heal themselves. Everybody has the capacity to be their best. And what is the, we'll say, right combination to figure out how to make that person perform at the best? And when we're looking at biological medicine, we're saying, here's the capability of the body to get to this level of health. Sometimes disease kind of steps in the way, but the body has the capability to do it. It's the doctor's job to look and see what's, we'll say, limiting the body from doing that, and then using different therapies and whatever they may be to accelerate the ability of the body to not only heal, but in my opinion, to get performance out of that particular organ or out of that organism or out of that person.
So biological medicine is really about whole person medicine. It's individualized medicine. We may have 10 patients come in with the very same diagnosis, the very same name of the disease, but yet they have 10 completely different treatment plans, because their particular issues or particular problems are due to an imbalance of one or many more of their different organ systems. In this clinic, what we find generally, any patient with a chronic illness, we'll say, has almost always got a minimum of 5 different organ systems that are out of balance. Could be their digestive system, could be their endocrine system, it's nearly always the lymphatic system. Or it could be their cardiovascular, nervous system. It's just a combination of things, and how it affects us, how it affects the individual is then what we ultimately are going after. And so that really it's a massive difference in going to a practitioner who practices biological medicine to a practitioner who just practices conventional models. So it's a much more all-encompassing, totally individualized. We don't treat disease, we treat patients.
All of these different medicines, whether that's Chinese medicine or whether that's conventional medicine or alternative medicine, it still comes down to biology and physiology. So we don't need to put a name on it. We can just say, this is biological medicine, meaning that we're going to look at this person biologically and see why that isn't occurring. And then we're going to use the medical part of it to say, we're going to make this perform like it should, first of all, and then make it perform better than it is right now, secondly. There's so many different excuses that I've come across throughout the years, educating and just speaking to people, and they all have the same questions. Why aren't there 100 or 150 of these clinics around, and why don't other doctors know this? And some of it's because lack of exposure, but the other part of it is lack of effort. And I think as a medical community, we just have to say we get complacent in that. We're not really pushed to do anything different. We're pushed to do the standard of care, and the standard of care is never going to be great. I don't think anybody would say the standard of anything is something that you want to excel to do. So it takes a doctor and a patient together, and they say, I'm going to push each other, and we're going to figure out what your condition is, and then we'll use the best from what's around in the world, and we'll see what other advantages we can gather. We're still using cortisone, we're still using aspirin, we're still using all the stuff that 15 years ago when I graduated from medical school, that was a standard of care, and it has not changed. And the results probably haven't changed, and people now are educated on those results and say, these diseases aren't black and white anymore. This does not just treat this. There are a whole bunch of different multifaceted diseases. And so we need to do things that are a little bit more on an approach of saying, I can go ahead and treat this particular condition on this many levels, and I'll get a better result from doing it. And you can combine drugs, and you can combine herbs, and you can combine technology, and you can combine IV therapy, and you can combine body work. But the goal is to get the person into the position where they have the best chance of performing or healing. And I think that's what biological medicine, by far, that's what attracted me to it, was that it had the most tools to give you the most information and the best treatments to get the best results.
So it definitely seems high-tech to a lot of the patients, and that's only because they haven't been exposed to these types of things. Although technology, I think in the next generation growing up with computers and cell phones and all that, people are more familiar with technology. However, what we do here is it's not really new. It's new to North America because most of these technologies come from Europe. Germany is a common place where many of us found it. Russia is incredibly advanced in their medical technology. But what everybody has known and been known for a few hundred years, in fact, if you go back into the 1800s and you look at the types of therapies that were given, you'll see that magnet therapy and electrical therapies, MagnaPulse, for example, was the type of therapy that was used. So they understood the advantage of what how the body gets out of balance electrically. So the concept of sort of the European technology is based on the fact that we're simply, for all intents and purposes, one huge electromagnet. We can look at every individual cell, and we can look at each cell runs like a battery. When your battery goes down, or when your laptop computer goes down, or your cell phone is weak, you need to plug it in. What are you doing? You're charging it up. So what we know, the same thing happens in the body. When multiple systems are not working efficiently or properly, it gets run down. And we know that ideally the charge within an individual cell should be at a certain point. So we use things like MagnaPulse, we use things like an electron foot bath, we use things like Valkian to literally try and recharge somebody's battery to get their cells working more efficiently, to be able to make more energy from those types of things. And the diagnostic testing we use is based on that idea also. We're looking for what is the energetic read of the body. And so, what's interesting in conventional model, again, is that things like an MRI or a CT scan or a PET scan, which are only energy related, if a woman has a mammography, but all they're doing is they're looking at the energy that's coming off the breast and to see whether there's a problem. So they acknowledge that it's used diagnostically. However, when you say, well, we can use that same energy to treat, they say, oh, no, we can't do that. But yet that's what's been used for hundreds of years in medicine, more European, again, medicine than what has come to North America. But so a patient coming will have a totally different set of tools as far as our evaluation is concerned. And we really get an internal look at the body.
I'm a physiologist at heart. I like to see how something works. And so if you break organs down to cells and you say, well, if I could get the cell to do one thing, what would it do to make everything better? And that's produce energy. And then once it produces energy, it's like, well, what's going to be the message to make it do exactly what it's supposed to do? And getting energy or getting mitochondria to produce energy, that's a big thing. I mean, everybody is tired, and when you get tired, organs don't function. When organs don't function, they get a disease. We can figure that out. And then if we backtrack that and say, well, how do we get the cell to produce more energy? And then what is the message going to be to get the cell to do something that it's supposed to do? And I think that's where homeopathy, and when I went into homeopathy, I mean, it was very confusing too. And I think, for the majority of people doing homeopathy, I still think they're confused. And that's just my bias to it. I mean, they're very smart people and they do these things, but homeopathy to me means that you're going to give the cell a message. And that's essentially a frequency. We know that in physics now. I mean, we're not talking about biochemistry anymore. And medicine's kind of clunky because we've kind of hitched our wagons on the fact that we only do biochemistry. Here's a drug. This is biochemically what it does. And then we're going to wait for these effects. And then, oh, by the way, we get these other effects that we call side effects too. We're still trying to get a message, or we're trying to get direction out of a cell. And homeopathy, which is the opposite of biochemistry, said, I think I'm just going to take this song, or I think I'm going to take this frequency. And we know that because now we can look at things and we can say, this particular organ sings at this particular song, or this particular drug has this particular frequency. And we know that that's how acupuncture works. You put it into a point and it goes up the nervous system and it tells the central nervous system to do something different, and that's the input, and you get output to that. It doesn't matter what you're going to do. Yoga works the same way. Meditation works the same way. any kind of therapy will always work like that. And homeopathy is simply taking something and giving the body a message. It's a frequency. And then that frequency, whether it has, it's a phone number, and whatever organ decides that it's going to answer that call, it brings more blood flow to the organ. I mean, it tells the organ what to do, or it tells the organ what not to do, and that's how you get the result of it. And I think that's where we get this confusion with homeopathy, and we're getting into that in medicine by saying, you know, the diagnostics have gone less from biochemistry and more to physics, even in conventional medicine. You know, why use an X-ray when you can use an MRI? There's nobody that will go back and say, I'd rather go ahead and use an X-ray than an MRI, or I'd rather just do blood work instead of looking at diagnostic imaging. I mean, who puts any value in routine blood work when they can do a scan? Nobody does. I mean, that's the evolution of technology in medicine, but we've only done it diagnostically. We have not done it therapeutically. And homeopathy kind of came around at the time where they said, instead of biochemistry, I'm going to use the same thing. I'm going to use physics. And I'm going to try to get the same result out of physics, which is a message that I can use out of biochemistry. And I think that's a very, you know, I think it will be the advancement of medicine to say, and we already kind of know this, that what the cell gets told is what the cell does. And that's what homeopathy always had the great thing of doing, is it said, here's a message, I'm going to give this organ a message. And when people dissect it, they're like, there's nothing there. It's like, okay, so you hold your cell phone here, and when it rings, you tell me, you know, you go ahead and tell me what's there. You know, and then it's a frequency. There's no physical substance to it. Can you still answer your phone? Yeah. Can you still talk on your phone? Yeah. Well, how do you do that? There's no phone line. You know, I remember when there was a phone line, so we could say, hey, here's the phone, here's the line, or here's my computer, here's the modem, here's the phone line. It won't work if there's no phone line. It's like, go show me somebody that has a phone line now. And I think that's the way the homeopathy, it's a frequency. We understand this in technology, we just don't want to admit it in medicine that maybe there's just something different besides that hard wire that gets the body to work.
The vast majority of our patients, unfortunately, are in what we call sympathetic dominance. And we're in sympathetic dominance, and the nervous system has two, just like a teeter-totter. They have, you know, a yin and a yang, and two balancing acts that are going on. And our sympathetic nervous system is known as our flight or fright part of the nervous system. And it's evolved over, you know, as man has survived, because it's a survival mechanism. The opposite of that is our parasympathetic state. And our parasympathetic state is our how the body heals itself, how the body is able to recover and then to move forward in a healing state. The ideal day is you spend 60% of your day in a sympathetic state and 40% of your day in the parasympathetic state. And the main times of the parasympathetic state is during our sleep hours, when we're actually in a calm, relaxed state and the body is allowed to recover physiologically, and then during meal times. If we eat, as most people unfortunately do, eat under a sympathetic dominance, what you do is you decrease your body's ability to produce adequate levels of digestive juices. So people don't digest food well, so then they have many GI problems, they may have heartburn, or they don't feel well, they feel bloated and gas, etc. So during the course of stressing a patient who comes into the clinic for a week, what we're trying to do is we're trying to take that sympathetic nervous system, make them realize that the body doesn't have to live in that particular state all the time, because when you're in that high sympathetic dominance, unfortunately, you may feel better, but you're not really healing, which is unfortunate for the patient because they think they get better. You know, when we get sick, when you've had surgery, when you have any kind of a major trauma, what is the most common thing? It's when you're sick, you want to sleep. You're trying to get into the parasympathetic state because the body knows you can't run away. So it says the only way I'm going to heal is to get into this particular state. The ultimate goal is to ultimately shift that. It's easily, as you mentioned, it's easily found by looking at the HRV test, which only takes a minute to do. It's very simple. You just put it on your finger and you can actually see in real time what the person's sympathetic, parasympathetic system is doing. And so the more we can get people then to learn how they can put themselves into parasympathetic state, the more rapid their healing will be allowed to happen, which obviously is in their best interest.
basic physiology, if you can't put the person in a relaxed state, or if you can't put, even in a joint, again, I always come back to a broken arm because people can figure that out. If you don't put the bones in the right position to mend, they won't mend, and everybody knows that. And the funny thing is, people come in here and they're overworked, overwhelmed. I mean, they're burdened by something. They're burdened by the diagnosis. They're burdened by the lack of information or the lack of diagnosis most times, and they can't figure out what to do. Looking at the nervous system and saying, how stressed, or what is that person even in a position that their body can go ahead and can it heal, or can it relax, or can it sleep, or can it rejuvenate, or can it detox? And heart rate variability, I mean, it looks at the difference. And again, they're frequencies. It's like, what is your body saying? Is it irritated, or is it in survival mode, or is it in rest and digest mode? And all this goes back to basic biology and physiology again. I'm going to say 99.9% of people now are in sympathetic dominance just because there's so much noise. There's so much noise in everybody's life, and that doesn't mean you can be a recluse. That means that will say it's still new, technology's new, problems are new, and everybody's ability to absorb that information, to absorb the amount of information that we're getting inundated with every single day, or even to look at a cell phone and say, well, to absorb the amount of frequency that's coming off that cell phone every single day. It's like, how much can the nervous system take? And the nervous system is always on guard. It's not really a safe place anymore for a body to go. Even at night when you're sleeping, it's like you got wireless all over the place, and you can't get it calm. And I think that's the most profound thing, is if we could somehow get the person in a position that they can respond to treatment by not having stress all the time, or not by being in that sympathetically stressed state. I mean, it's miraculous what happens. But you have to treat the body, and then that's where the neurofeedback and those other things come in, because you have to treat the brain too.